The case of Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield and his collection of human skin furniture. Plainfield, Wisconsin, a quiet little town nestled among endless fields. But in the winter of 1957, this place became a nightmare no one dared to speak of. Imagine, you step into an old, decrepit house, the stench of rot rising from the decaying wooden floor. On the walls, masks dangle, yet they are not ordinary masks. These are real human faces, peeled from their skulls. Welcome to the world of Ed Gein, the skin flayer, the man who turned fear into horrifying reality. Plainfield, Wisconsin, in the early 20th century. A small town where people lived quietly among golden cornfields and dusty dirt roads. But on the outskirts of town, in a dilapidated house, lived a boy named Ed Gein, a soul slowly being suffocated by the darkness of his family. Imagine a father, George, a raging alcoholic, growling and smashing things in drunken fits. A mother, Augusta, with piercing eyes, reading the Bible every night, her voice echoing like a curse, "The world out there is sinful, Ed, women are the devil's trap." Ed grew up in fear and reverence for his mother. She was the only light in his dark world. But in 1940, his father collapsed from alcohol abuse and died. 4 years later, his brother Henry perished in a mysterious fire in the fields. People called it an accident, but someone saw Ed leaving the scene, his hands trembling, his eyes wet with tears. Now, only Ed and his mother remained in the cold, desolate house, where every corner was soaked in Augusta's prayers. Then came the fateful day. In December 1945, Augusta suffered a stroke and died. Ed knelt by her bedside, clutching her lifeless body, whispering, "Don't go, Mother. I need you." He did not cry anymore. His eyes were hollow, as if his soul had died with her. From that moment, Ed Gein became a living ghost, a lonely man in a house filled with dust and memories. But in his mind, a sinister plan began to take shape. He wanted his mother back, at any cost. As the sun set and darkness swallowed Plainfield, Ed Gein did not stay inside like everyone else. He had somewhere else to go. Under the dim moonlight, he donned an old coat, grasped a rusted shovel, and walked toward the local cemetery. The headstones leaned at odd angles, weeds grew wild, but to Ed, this was not a resting place. This was his store. He chose fresh graves, where the soil was still loose, the scent of decay still lingering in the air. Middle-aged women, graying hair, resembling his mother, Augusta. He dug without hesitation. The sound of the shovel tearing through the earth echoed in the silent night, like the heartbeat of a predator on the hunt. And when the coffin was finally exposed, Ed smiled, a twisted, chilling smile. He pulled the corpse out, his hands trembling with excitement, whispering, "Mother, I found you." But digging up graves wasn't enough. Back in his dimly lit house, Ed transformed his kitchen into a grotesque workshop. Under the flickering oil lamp, he peeled the skin off corpses, carefully, like a tailor at work. His knife traced each incision, pulling the flesh from the bone, his hands stained with dried blood. From these remains, he crafted things no one could have imagined, masks made from real human faces, their empty eyes staring into nothingness, a bra stitched from human chest skin, eerily soft to the touch. He wore them, stood before a mirror, and giggled like a child receiving a gift. Night after night, Ed Gein lived in his own twisted world, a world where the line between the living and the dead blurred. But grave robbing was only the beginning. He was about to take his game to a much bloodier level. Digging up graves wasn't enough anymore. Ed Gein's hunger grew darker, more twisted. In 1954, Mary Hogan, the owner of a tavern in Plainfield, vanished without a trace. No one saw her leave that night. Only a small pool of blood on the floor and a single spent bullet remained. Ed had come, with his father's old hunting rifle. He shot her on the spot, then dragged her corpse back to his house, like a beast bringing home its prey. But that was just the beginning. On November 16, 1957, Bernice Worden, a kind-hearted woman who ran the local hardware store, also disappeared. This time, he wasn't careful. A customer saw Ed leaving the store, holding something red, dripping. Suspicion finally arose. The police decided to visit Ed Gein's farm, and stepped into a nightmare no one was prepared for. In the cold barn behind the house, they found it. The body of Bernice Worden hung upside down from a wooden beam, like a slaughtered pig. Her head was gone, only a hollow cavity remained, dried blood crusting around her severed neck. Her organs had been removed and placed neatly in a rusted bucket nearby. But that was just the beginning. Scattered around were objects beyond belief: bowls made from human skulls, polished as if freshly cleaned, a chair upholstered with human skin, stretched taut in a way that sent chills down one's spine, and on the table, a deep red heart lay inside a plastic bag, like a grotesque gift Ed had left behind for the world. Ed Gein didn't just kill people. He turned them into art. He stood there, giggling as the police cuffed him, as if it was all just a game. His house was no longer a home, it was a slaughterhouse, a museum of madness. When the police shackled Ed Gein, he didn't resist. He just stood there, empty-eyed, a crooked smile on his lips. He recounted everything like a twisted fairy tale, from the night spent digging graves under the moonlight, to the gunshots echoing in the tavern, and the blood dripping in the barn. He spoke of the human skin suit he had sewn, the one he longed to wear so he could become his mother. To Ed, it was all just a way to keep Augusta alive. But the world did not forgive him. In 1958, Ed was sent to the Wisconsin State Hospital for the criminally insane, declared mentally unfit for trial. He sat there, in a cold white room, staring through a tiny window, mumbling words no one understood. By 1968, when doctors deemed him more stable, he was retried. The court sentenced him to life in prison for the murder of Bernice Worden. But Mary Hogan, and the dozens of bodies he had unearthed, never got justice. Ed Gein died on July 26, 1984, in a psychiatric facility in Madison, from respiratory failure and cancer. He passed away quietly, no last words, no remorse. His horrifying house was burned to the ground by local residents shortly after his arrest, as if they wanted to erase every trace of the monster. But its ashes still haunt Plainfield. They say that on moonless nights, you can still hear the sound of a shovel breaking the earth somewhere in the fields, and a whisper calling for mother from the darkness. What do you think of Ed Gein? A madman or a monster in human form? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling stories. And the next time you pass by an old house, take a closer look. Who knows what's lurking behind that door?